How is the West Virginia legislature increasing punishments for driving while under the influence? I'm Jamie Robinson, and coming up next on WVU News, I'll tell you about a new bill that's affecting DUI laws across the state.
Straight ahead on WVU News, I'm Skylar Harvath, and this week we're up in the air. I got the chance to go up in a plane just like this with a flight school who's willing to help you get your wings.
I'm John Ferentz, and it's nearly been 2 months since a CSX train derailment. And straight ahead on WVU News, I'll tell you how Fayette County residents are reacting to it. Our award-winning WVU newscast starts right now. Two months have passed since a train derailment in southern West Virginia, but residents are still feeling the effects. Find out how the communities are coping with the aftermath. I'm John Ferentz.
And I'm Natalie Price. Are you thinking before you drink and drive? If you're not, you may want to start. Learn how DUI penalties are increasing in West Virginia. You're watching WVU News, an award-winning newscast produced by television journalism students right here at West Virginia University.
More questions arise as time passes since the Fayette County train derailment.
While residents are awaiting answers, they're still haunted by the sights and sounds of that day.
In part 2 of our special CSX train derailment series, I found out how residents are reminded of the train derailment every single day.
It's really one of the scariest times I've ever experienced it.
This is how residents of Boomers Bottom, West Virginia described the scene just minutes after a CSX train carrying millions of gallons of oil exploded only a few hundred feet away from their homes. The accident happened just after 1 o'clock on February 16th, and Elizabeth Lowe Shepard was home when the train derailed. She vividly remembers the scene.
I came running out on the front porch. I looked toward the river. About 5-6 houses down, the whole river was engulfed in flames. I mean, literally just more and more flames were going up.
The flames were so strong that Shirley Rose, who lives across the lake from where the accident happened, could feel the fires in her home.
I could feel the heat through the window.
Uncomfortable temperatures were not the only effects that residents felt right away. The train exploded with such force that houses began to crack. Firefighters arrived on the scene shortly after and began to evacuate residents. More than 400 people live in this residential neighborhood. Over 200 of them were evacuated. Families on East Street fled to the local high school. Thick black smoke from the explosion began to billow over the neighborhood, making it almost impossible to see or breathe.
The burning of my eyes, the hoarseness, because you're breathing it in.
No one was killed in the accident, but one resident who lived right next to the train tracks barely made it out alive.
The man came running out the front door with flames coming down both sides of his house, and he just barely missed the flames.
The accident caused more than enough scares, but taught Elizabeth a lifelong lesson.
It makes you think, every day's a blessing.
Almost all of the families have returned to their homes, and cleanup efforts, they're still ongoing. From tragedy on the tracks to accidents on our roads, lawmakers have just voted to increase penalties for drunk driving.
Reporter Jamie Robinson is here to tell us why officials say the punishment should fit the crime. Jamie.
Thanks, Natalie and John. Currently, if you are charged with a DUI causing death, there is no minimum jail time, but that's all about to change. A bill has just passed through the House and Senate making drunk driving laws stiffer. I had a chance to learn how the law could make people reconsider before they get behind the wheel drunk. Those found guilty of driving under the influence in West Virginia will soon face harsher penalties. The recently passed House Bill 2664 will implement tougher punishments for those found guilty of the crime. WVU student Caitlin Klein knows firsthand what it's like to be the victim of a DUI.
I was walking home from being out with one of my friends, and the next thing you know, I woke up in the hospital and my parents were standing over me. I was in the ICU and they told me I was hit by a drunk driver. I had multiple brain bleeds, a broken pelvis, fractured skull, and torn ligaments in my neck.
If House Bill 2664 is signed into law by Governor Earl Ray Tomblin, it would implement a minimum jail time of 3 months and double the fees associated with a DUI, something that Sheriff Al Kisner tells me will fit the severity of this crime.
You have somebody behind the wheel of a vehicle that at some point in time, because of their intoxication level, would be used as a weapon.
Drunk driving is the cause of over 30% of alcohol-related fatalities in West Virginia. Last year, there were 357 DUI arrests in Monongalia County alone, and officials say enough is enough.
I think that until that ends, or until we get it to a point where it's not as big an issue as it is right now, we're going to continue to see changes in the law to address those situations.
Caitlin hopes that this bill will help to prevent what happened to her from happening to anyone else.
I think that increasing the penalties will help people think twice about getting behind the wheel and driving drunk. What happened to me should not happen to other people. It was the worst thing ever, and nobody should have to go through something like that.
Currently, those convicted face no mandatory jail time and a fine of $500. If the crime is committed on the WVU campus, they face expulsion from the university. This bill was written as a result of a tragic death of 14-year-old Andrea Bales. The Mason County teenager was killed in a car crash caused by a man who had 9 DUI convictions. Natalie, back to you.
The legislature did not only pass a DUI bill, but another substance abuse bill that could save thousands of lives. This new law encourages people to call 911 in case of a drug or alcohol overdose. The bill, known as a Good Samaritan law, will grant immunity from misdemeanors to people who call for help from law enforcement. The idea behind the bill is to encourage more people to contact EMS who may be afraid of being charged themselves. A study done by Cornell University found that 19% of college students had been in a situation where 911 should have been called, but only 4% actually did call.
Have you ever wanted to fly, Natalie? Well, now that dream may be within reach.
Actually, I have, and reporter Skylar Harvath did get the chance to view Morgantown from new heights, and he tells us how you too can soar the friendly skies.
Donnie Belezio sees the world in a unique way. His views from 3,500 feet. When Donnie's not soaring through the air, he's grounded, teaching aspiring pilots at the RSA flight school.
I took up a 14-year-old once. I was in the right seat, boy was in the left seat, and I gave him controls, and his eyes just lit up. Came on down on the ground. I was, so you want to start training, and he was all for it.
But Donnie's lessons go far beyond the traditional classroom.
More experienced students can actually fly this, the Cessna 182 Skyline. But this can be an expensive hobby, getting up to $15,000 to earn your wings.
Sure, the bird's eye views are great, but the airport itself is too. For a small facility, Airport Director Glenn Kelly says the airport offers 4 commercial flights to DC and back each day. And the future is bright. Plans for expansion are already in the works.
We are the second busiest airport in the state. So for takeoff and landings, we're only about 2,500 from last year behind Charleston. And that just tells you how much business traffic there is, and also what the flight school's doing, because it all counts.
Before you grab your wallet, you've got to go to class. The RSA school is actually one of the only small flight schools in the country to have its own flight simulator. But Donnie will tell you, nothing compares to seeing the ground almost a mile below you and getting lost in the clouds. Skylar Harvath, WVU News, Morgantown.
While planes are flying high, cars in Morgantown are swerving all over the roads to avoid potholes, and the damages that potholes cause to cars can quickly add up. Nearly 200 claims have already been filed against the West Virginia Department of Highways for damages caused by potholes, 43 of those coming from Monongalia County. Filing a claim requires submitting a claim form to the West Virginia Court of Claims, detailing the accident with pictures and including insurance information and cost of damages. The potholes cannot be fixed until the weather stays consistently above 40 degrees. Roads must also be clear and dry for several days before repairing the potholes.
Do you have a toddler that uses your iPad? Well, if you do, you're not alone.
New research shows that toddlers' learning and social skills may actually be impaired by using these devices.
Jennifer Clark joins us now from Social Square with the latest in social media and pop culture news. Jennifer?
Thanks, Natalie and John. With mobile devices everywhere, it's easy for your children to get their hands on them. Education reporter Kayla Kesselman found out how problems with your children and technology can be avoided.
Many parents are turning to their iPads or smartphones to entertain their children. Approximately 70% of toddlers are using these devices. Bridgeport resident Stephen Brown says it's important for his daughter not to depend so much on electronic devices.
I feel that if she's only interacting with people through her, like the devices, and she's not interacting with other humans or other kids, that might take away from her personal skills.
Researchers with the Boston University School of Medicine say that children younger than 30 months of age cannot learn from electronic devices as they do from real-life interactions. However, WVU's Child Development Program Manager Bethany Stiles says apps on these devices can be helpful to a child's learning and development.
There are some pretty amazing apps there for kids, so you can't devalue their purpose, but you can't replace that as being the primary thing that they should be playing with either.
Nearly 40% of children right here in America between the ages of 2 and 4 are caught with having a mobile device in their hands. And with more than 80,000 children apps out there, for many parents, it's hard to resist using them.
And that's why parents such as Brown limit the amount of time they allow their child to use these devices.
I try to limit the amount that I let her use a smartphone or the amount of time we watch TV even, and try to get her to play with other kids or myself or her mother or family.
Researchers are also warning parents that using smart devices to divert a child's attention could be detrimental and are suggesting parents increase direct human-to-human interaction. Kayla Kesselman, WVU News, Morgantown.
Experts also say that children younger than 3 years old should not use mobile devices because it could impair a child's development in the areas of math and science. Natalie and John, back to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. 12 Mountaineer football players participated in this year's NFL Pro Day.
Sports anchor Steve Accardi joins us next to tell us which players stood out for the pros.
I'm Devin Kelly. Coming up this week on WVU News, it's NFL Pro Day. I'll tell you which WVU athletes made an impression on NFL scouts.
We're all different. Our interests, our backgrounds can influence our futures. But without focus, they're just dreams. But what if someone could give your interests life? If they could give your background power? If they could fuel what motivates you? That's what gives dreams meaning, purpose. And perhaps that was the moment you knew you wanted to be a Mountaineer.
Steve, I understand representatives from 28 NFL teams packed the Caperton Indoor Practice Facility last month.
And they were all there to watch Mountaineers at this year's Pro Day?
Absolutely. Well, Kevin White was not the only one getting the scouts' attention this year. WVU had many different players with impressive times, vertical jumps, and overall playing ability. While other players did stand out, no one could quite catch Kevin White, who the NFL Network named the top receiver in the 2015 draft. Sports reporter Devin Kelly witnessed firsthand the great performances at WVU's Pro Day.
WVU hosted NFL Pro Day on Friday, March 13th. There were 12 active and former players that participated, including Kevin White. White turned heads at the NFL Combine after running a 4.35 in the 40-yard dash.
Here, it's a little peace of mind. I'm just running routes, playing football, back with Clint Trickett, Mario, and all these guys. It's very comfortable, so I loved it today.
White caught 14 out of 15 passes from former quarterback Clint Trickett, who also threw to Mario Alford and running back Jeremiah Smith. Alford, who also participated at the NFL Combine, ran a 4.43, but on Pro Day he posted a time of 4.28, a time he says he should have achieved in the first place.
Like I said, I was just overthinking myself, trying to do way too much that I was taught, so just got it. They just told me just get on and run, so that's what I did.
Offensive lineman Mark Glowinski and Quentin Spain got some one-on-one time with the Steelers' offensive line coach. Glowinski was present at the NFL Combine running an official 40 time of 5.2 seconds. White opted out of running again at Pro Day and only participated in route and catching drills.
It's a mental thing. You know, if you think something's hard, it's going to be hard. If you think it's easy, it's going to be easy. If you think you're great at something, you're going to be great at something. So I'm into the whole mind thing.
NFL scouts from 28 different teams came out to the Caperton practice facility to watch WVU seniors and former players showcase their talent for the next level. White is projected to be picked 6th in the first round of the NFL draft. The others are projected to be picked later on and have been in talks with NFL teams for workouts beforehand. The draft begins April 30th and will officially end May 2nd. Devin Kelly, WVU Sports, Morgantown.
The majority of evaluators see Kevin White as the #1 wide receiver, just ahead of Alabama's Amari Cooper. NBC Sports reported that White has a good chance of going to the Oakland Raiders in the top 5. John and Natalie, back to you.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of WVU News. You can visit us online at our website.
You can also watch any of our shows on YouTube, and please follow us and our reporters on Twitter. I'm John Ferentz.
And I'm Natalie Price. Thanks for watching WVU News. We'll see you next time.